Hey everybody, my name is Horia Peruzzu and I'm a developer advocate at IBM. I'm helping out Naval here with the Badge of the Week initiative. So for this week, the badge will be the IBM Blockchain Foundation Developer. So this badge expands on the blockchain essentials. That was kind of the badge of the week a few weeks ago. So I'll go over well, first, let's just go over how to get to this URL. We can just Google developer foundation IBM tab. And then we should be able to, go into our developer works courses and then find our, let's see, blockchain. Foundation. Okay, so we can find this badge here, and we can kind of see what we'll learn from getting this badge. So we'll first of all we'll start learning more about Hyperledger Composer. What are the differences between Hyperledger Composer and Hyperledger Fabric, which is very important to understand, and then kind of some design thinking, and kind of understanding the use cases behind blockchain, and then we'll go a little bit into the consensus, and that's kind of the high level overview. So with this badge, we'll kind of talk about Composer and then also Fabric, and then more considerations. Okay, so without further ado, we can kind of get into the actual material. So I'll also show you some things that are not actually in this course, but I'll show you kind of the IBM blockchain platform starter plan. And that's kind of like when you use this Composer tool and you want to actually build a network, or you're working with a client, or you want to get something going in production. I'll show you kind of what tool IBM offers for building blockchain networks. So I'll go ahead and show you this right now, really quick. So here, I have my Swagger UI running right now. As you can see, it's part of the IBM blockchain platform. And we can go into, basically this is just the REST APIs that are gonna write to the blockchain. And what IBM offers is a kind of like a visual tool, like a UI on top of this Hyperledger Fabric network. And I'll show you this right now. I think this is the one. So yeah, we'll go into this blockchain service. As you can see here, it's blockchain. We got the location, we got the org, and then we'll launch this network here. So this is kind of the UI that IBM offers for the starter plan. And if you go into your channels here, as I'm going now, you'll see your default channel, and you'll see when it was created and how many blocks there are on it. So you see here, there's 14 blocks. That's 14 transactions on the network. And I'll show you how invoking one of these REST API calls will actually add blocks to this network. So I'll do. Okay, so we can go into pour cup here. Put in cup ID, and the actual cup ID doesn't matter too much. So we can do that. We can try it out. Great. So we see this response code 200, and then we can go into here, and we should have a couple more blocks here. I think I did an extra transaction before this. So we should have like 16, and we should see that the time since last transaction should be like a couple seconds. 19 seconds, perfect. So let's just do like 2 more really quick. We'll do 901, 902, and 903. And if we refresh, we'll see 3 more blocks here, and we can see 901, 2, and 3. We should see that if we inspect the block, we should see that data being written to the blockchain. So that's just a little visual. So you can see here the chain code ID. We can see the time it was invoked with the type of chain code. And if you see here, 903 is there. You can see kind of the timestamp here, the registry type. You get a lot of different information here. Of course, if we go here, we should see 902. And then, of course, 901. Okay, so that's just a little bit of an intro to the starter plan, or to the blockchain starter plan. You can try samples here. You can, you can have different channels. You can invite different organizations into your channel, and yeah, and this is where you can invite others. So that's kind of a little just intro to the starter plan here. Okay, so now that you've seen a little bit of the IBM blockchain platform, I just wanted to show you. Yeah, that was almost like the end finished product. So I wanted to show you kind of what that all looks like and what IBM offers. So now, what this course will help you do is build those networks that I just showed you. So it'll help you understand all the components, such as the smart contracts, the consensus, the certificate authority, all the rules of the different participants, and actually working with the Composer modeling language, which is something you'll need to learn if you want to use Composer. So yeah, let's go ahead and run through this really quick. So at the beginning, you'll see the prerequisites. I believe there's a couple command line tools you'll have to install. So you'll have to install these things here, especially for the lab 1. We don't have to do this right now, but you'll have to do that. So then you kind of get into more of a high level understanding of what Hyperledger Composer is. So it's basically this tool that was created to work with Hyperledger Fabric and take away some of the complexity of building a blockchain network. So from what I've heard from other developers using Composer is that more than 50% of the time you just use Composer to build out your network, and you'll have all the functionality that you need, and you'll have a really quick and easy way to deploy your smart contract with Composer. So most of the times a blockchain solution can be developed with Composer, and a lot of times it is easier. That being said, there's also the Fabric SDK, there's Java, there's Node SDK, so you can actually work with the Fabric APIs too as well and write the chain code, and you can go that way as well and use a different set of APIs, and you can work directly with the network, that a little bit more low level. But I think for the majority of people, Hyperledger Composer is kind of the de facto or the standard to creating your first network. Okay, so in the first lab here, I'll show you kind of the beginning. This is kind of just the actual tutorial from Hyperledger Composer. You'll first install your Yeoman to create the network structure. Once you've created that network structure, we'll go into the CTO file. So this CTO file, what's really important is this namespace. So everything after this org.example.mynetwork will have a different namespace. Everything inside your CTO file will be inside of this namespace. So that'll be important when creating the transactions, and you'll begin to understand that as you're working with the logic file too. So basically, in this CTO file, we have 3 main aspects that we need to define. One of them being the assets. So that's either the money or the car or something that's being traded on the network. The second thing is participant. So these are the people that are actually making trades. So these are the people that will be exchanging assets, right? When a participant exchanges these assets on the network, it's all going to be stored on the blockchain, right? So we need people, we need things, and then we need some sort of business logic. So if I sell you this thing, you give me this much money in return. So that's this transaction we have here. So as you can see, this arrow notation is specific to Hyperledger Composer. So this is it's using its own modeling language. And if you click here, you'll see kind of the modeling language, and you'll see all the assets, and you'll see the different types and different kind of different things you can have in this in the language. I'm not going to go through all of them because it's going to take some time, but just remember the most important things are just the assets, the participants, and the transactions here. And if you have these arrows, that just means you have a relationship. So basically, this transaction needs a trader. So it needs one of these, and it also needs a commodity. So this transaction needs an asset, right? So that's what these arrows are showing, is that a trade transaction needs a trader, and it needs something to trade, the asset. Now that we've gotten the data schema or the modeling file kind of understood, we'll go into the transaction logic. So as you can see here, we have this function called trade commodity, and all it does is it sets this new owner to the commodity. It sets the commodity's owner to this new owner that we're inputting. And then what's really important is this get asset registry. That's actually going into the blockchain and getting this all the assets, and then we're going to update the asset with the new owner. So that's what this await line is doing. So that's this really very simple hello world to exchanging something on the network. After that, we have the access control rules. So this is going to give permissions to everybody in the network to either have write access or read access. So for right now, we have a very simple hello world. We don't have any specific. Sorry, let me check if this is recording. So we don't have any specific rules here. This is very basic, and we're basically allowing all participants to have access to everything, and that's pretty much it. So very simple stuff here. As you get a little bit more as you have more requirements and as you have more advanced networks, you'll have to build out these rules to give only certain participants access to only certain resources. Okay, so after that, we're basically going to use this command line tool called Composer to create a business network file, and then we'll start importing this file and generating some private public key pairs and some credentials to log into this network as admin. And the last thing we do is use this Composer REST server command, and what that does is basically what I showed you here, which is it generates this Swagger UI. So it generates these endpoints here. So instead of having porkup, we would have the transaction name, which would be trade commodity, right? So trade commodity would be there. We'd have trader, we'd have commodity, we'd have trade. So all of these things are things that I've defined in my model.cto file. So great. That's a high-level overview of Composer. So just keep that in mind, that the end product of Composer is this Swagger UI, which then you can use to call out other, which you could write to the blockchain and query the blockchain. So yeah, hopefully that helped a little bit and give you a high-level overview. And yeah, I'll move into the next couple sections. Okay, great. So we finished this first lab, and then we're going to go into a little bit deeper now. So we'll go into Hyperledger Fabric now. So you'll see kind of what are the different roles, and you'll find more details here as you go through this lab. So yeah, we'll get to the components, considerations for a developer. So, a lot of this stuff here is similar to Composer, just a little bit more detailed, and you have a little bit more control over this functionality. So now the lab 2, which is kind of the main chunk of this assignment. Again, it'll be doing a tutorial from Hyperledger Fabric. So you'll basically be setting up your dev environment first. So basically, you'll have the first things you'll do is if you clone this directory, which you should when you have done this prerequisites, you'll get these Fabric samples fabcar directory. You'll have all these files within there. So each of these files will invoke or have some effect on the blockchain. So for example, enroll admin is just going to create some certificates for the admin of the network and have a username and password for that admin. Invoke is actually going to write to the blockchain. Query, of course, is going to query the blockchain, get data. Register user is to create users that are not the admin. So usually when you're the admin, you can register other users because you have full control over the network. So that's what this register user function is used for. And then this start fabric is just to actually start the network and to start the peers. And that's using Docker. So great. So you kind of go through this tutorial. You install these prerequisites. You have these files. So you start the network first, and then you kind of enroll your admin user. You'll register the user. Now you'll see here that you'll query the network. When you instantiate the network, the code automatically creates these 10 cars. So when we do query, we get the data from these cars back. And that's more or less it. After that, we're going to do some invoke. So we'll create some cars in the ledger. So you'll see you can do create car. So we'll do that to create a car. Then you can query the car that you created. You'll also have a chance to update the ledger by changing the car owner. So that'll actually change membership, change the actual participant of who has the car. So similar to how we did that in Composer. We'll do this with Fabric, so very similar here. And that's more or less it. At the end, you'll be able to query that new car that you created and see that you successfully changed the owner. And that's more or less it for the second tutorial. And the last tutorial gets even deeper kind of into the network. So this second tutorial that I just went through was kind of for the developer, and now this is more for the architect or the operator. So this is getting even more low level. So if you're interested in systems or other, getting closer to the network, this is kind of what you want to focus on. So a lot of this will be actually about generating the certificates, and it'll talk about the public key infrastructure and kind of go even deeper into the how the actual cryptography works. So basically, you'll have these tools that will generate your public private key pairs. So you'll have this function that generates certificates. So when you create the admin, you'll create those certificates with the admin. And after that, you'll kind of install the chain code and do similar things like querying and invoking the chain code like the previous tutorial, but it'll just be much more depth, and you'll see you'll get closer to the actual peers and nodes on the network. Yeah, and that's more or less it. You'll see, yeah, same thing here. You'll be able to query the network, and I think this one is using the Marbles sample app. So yeah, that's more or less kind of an overview of the blockchain foundation developer. So yeah, after you finish that third lab, you'll basically just have a quiz and then you'll earn your badge. So, this is a good way to kind of get fully introduced to all the different tools and frameworks that are important when developing a blockchain network. So Hyperledger Fabric is one of the main frameworks right now out there, one of the most popular. And of course, there's Solidity and Ethereum, which I believe Hyperledger is working on an integration for Solidity smart contracts too, to be able to deploy those to Hyperledger Fabric too. But for now, the Composer is a great way to build your first network, build your proof of concept, and then if you get deeper and deeper and want to get more more customized applications, you'll go into the Fabric, and then this second and third tutorial will help you when you get a little more advanced, or second and third lab here. So yeah, hope you enjoyed the video, and good luck with the course, and please let me know if you have any questions. Thanks so much for listening, and take care.